Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of Brothers in Arms Road to Hill 30. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Before we start the next missions, let's take a look at some of these extras that we've unlocked. I always like the historically accurate stuff that you can unlock. German Army OST battalions. Let's take a look at this.
Ost battalions, from the German word Ost or East, were troops drafted into German service from prisoners captured from the Soviet Army.
Okay, this is historically accurate, it is true, and this is probably the only game that I've ever seen that's actually done this. So you guys were right when you told me Brothers in Arms focuses a lot on historical realism. Now I have never seen the Eastern Wehrmacht troops, Eastern Wehrmacht prisoner troops in the Western Front in video games. I've seen them in movies before, but I've never seen them actually in I've never actually seen them in video games. But this is actually true. There actually were Soviet prisoners that became Wehrmacht soldiers that were actually in Normandy and in France in 1944. The Germans sent a lot of their soldiers to France and Normandy. Now, about these guys is these guys were from various parts of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Front. These guys were from Ukraine, Belarus. Some of them were from Russia, but there was also troops that were from Central Asia. Like you had Tatars, for example, that were in these battalions. You had people from Azerbaijan, Azeris, I think that they're called. You had Kazakhs also. Let's take a look here.
Most of these soldiers were from Asian Russia, North Africa, Russia, Ukraine, the Muslim republics of the Soviet Union, and other places the Germans had conquered.
Yeah, and there's actually a story. That this one soldier actually has a movie about him. I've actually seen the movie, but the movie is a bit historically inaccurate to what had actually happened. But about the real life story, and I'll have a picture of the guy up on the screen here. I forget the guy's name, but I remember I read about him. This is a Korean guy, and this guy had pretty much fought on every single front in World War II. The only one he didn't fight in would be North Africa, I would say. But basically, what this guy did is this guy was a Korean man that was actually drafted into the Japanese army because Korea was conquered by Japan at that time and became a colony, and the Japanese had conscripted a lot of Koreans. And in 1937, the Japanese were actually fighting against the Soviets in Mongolia. So there was the Soviet-Japanese war in Mongolia, and basically what the war was, it was a war on who would dominate Mongolia. So Japan wanted it to be their own sphere of influence, their own colony. The Soviets wanted Mongolia to be their sphere of influence and their own colony. The Soviets ended up winning that war, and this guy actually ended up serving and fighting in that war. Now what happened is he was in the Japanese army, and he fighting against the Soviets, gets taken prisoner by the Soviets, gets sent to a gulag. A few years later, what happens is the Germans invade the Soviet Union. The Soviets were so desperate, what they did was they drafted their gulag prisoners also. So this Korean guy went from being a Japanese soldier, being captured by the Soviets, sent to a gulag. Now he was drafted by the Soviets. And guess where he was sent? He was sent to the Eastern Front, I think specifically Stalingrad. And when he was in Stalingrad in the Soviet army, guess what happened to him? He gets captured again, surrenders to the Germans capture him. Then what happens is the Germans then draft him into the German army, and guess where he gets sent? 2 years later, he gets sent to France in Normandy, and he surrenders to the Americans, and at that point the war was over for him when he surrendered to the Americans. So this guy kept surrendering to different armies, and they kept forcing him into their armies. And when the Americans actually first caught him, they thought that he was actually Japanese, but he was actually Korean. But that was, and the movie I think is called My Way, but it's actually a true story about this one guy who just went through so much craziness, going through just so many different armies.
The Ost battalions in Normandy area on D-Day were from the 709th and 243rd Static Divisions. The quality of these troops was so low that the German army had no chance to implement a defense in depth and fixed these men to fight from prepared positions that guarded the beaches.
So the backstory behind a lot of these Eastern troops is that some of them were prisoners that were basically forced into the Wehrmacht against their will. Others were, anti-communists who hated the Soviets, who ended up joining the German army. Hitler believed that Slavs and Central Asians were inferior to Germans and Aryans. Hitler despised Tatars. He despised Central Asians. He despised Slavs. Slavs would be, Poles, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Russians. He thought that they were inferior to German Aryan troops. And so Hitler was completely against using any kind of, Eastern troops in the Wehrmacht. This was until late 1943. So until late 1943, when the Germans lost, Stalingrad at the beginning of 1943, and in the middle they lost Kursk in July 1943. When the Germans started getting pushed back, and there was a manpower shortage because so many Germans had gotten captured or killed, they realized they needed more men, and so at that point Hitler finally allowed the Eastern prisoners to be drafted into the Wehrmacht, but he was so against it. And also, here's the thing is if you were an Eastern prisoner, if you were like a Soviet prisoner of war and you were actually captured by the Germans, you had very little chance of surviving. Very, very little chance of survival. Now, here's the thing. This is one thing that I typically don't like when people like spread misinformation about like World War II, because I tend to see like whenever I look at like comments on like these historical videos, right? I see people that they leave comments and they say, oh, Germans treated, prisoners of war fairly. If you were an American soldier, you would be treated fairly. You would be sent to, Stalag camp, which was like, camp for American and British soldiers. And you would, in the Stalag camps, the soldiers, they had food and they were able to survive most of the war. But here's the thing about this. You cannot compare the conditions that Americans and British troops faced compared to Eastern prisoners. Because here's the thing. American troops and British troops were treated much better than Eastern troops. So if you were like an American soldier or a British soldier and you got captured by the Germans, you had a much higher probability, I would say even 10 times higher of a chance of surviving than you would if you were an Eastern prisoner. So Western prisoners were typically treated better. They were given better, places to sleep. They were given better, food. They were given more relaxation time at their in their prisoner of war camps. But on the Eastern Front, the Germans would treat Eastern prisoners very horribly. Starve them, beat them, use slave labor, and the Germans took over 5 million Soviet prisoners during the war, and over 2 million of those died. So more than 40% of all of the Soviet prisoners of war actually died in German captivity. And what's even more horrible also here is that a lot of Soviet prisoners, when they actually got liberated by the Soviets, they were actually called deserters and traitors, and a lot of them were actually hanged or sent to gulags. Some of them were allowed to return to civilian life, but a lot of them were actually punished. They were claiming that they betrayed the motherland by surrendering. And so some of these Eastern prisoners, they were so scared. They were either scared they were going to get killed by the Germans, or they were going to get scared that they were going to get killed by the Soviets. And so they ended up, accepting into the German army. They said that they wanted to join into the German army. So there's millions of these guys, and there's millions of these Eastern, troops. It wasn't just a few thousand. The Germans actually used millions of Eastern troops from, Central Asia, Russia, Eastern Europe, in their army. But that's basically the backstory on that.
The German strategy was to use the Ost battalions to defend from fixed positions, and German NCOs were ordered to shoot their own men if they tried to run away.
True. I will say this, like I was saying earlier, is I read these comments of people saying, they said that, oh, if you were, a prisoner, you'd be treated fairly by the Germans. That's not true. Is that if you were a Western prisoner and you got captured by the Germans, you'd be probably treated more fairly. But if you were an Eastern prisoner and you were captured by the Germans, you had a very low chance of survival. Germans would often times execute their Eastern prisoners, murder them. So there was so I hear this, people spread this nonsense around where they say, oh, the Germans treated their prisoners of war fairly. That is not true. The Soviets didn't treat their prisoners of war fairly also, to be fair on that. But there's this big misconception that people say that, oh, the Germans would treat all their prisoners fairly. That is nonsense. There was a lot of POWs. POWs in the Eastern Front were treated absolutely horrible by the Germans, and the Germans actually did end up, killing a lot of their own men that were retreating or did not want to fight.
Ost battalions.
What's this one here? Oh, looking north along Utah Beach, standing at exit 4, photographed by art director Brian Martell. Utah Beach, so this was one of the places that was not as heavily fortified as Omaha. Artist Jen Wells pauses on the causeway where German troops fleeing Utah Beach were ambushed by U.S. paratroopers. Exit 4 is in the distance. The German caseman at Exit 4 on Utah Beach survives the war. 60 subsequent years of weather and tourism. Art director Brian Martell and designer Eric Dosher step up to see the same view that Sergeant Baker has of Utah Beach invasion in the game. Today, Exit 4 is a memorial that honors the paratroopers and infantry that linked up here. Colonel Antel pauses the memorial to take notes. On the 60th anniversary of D-Day, all that remains of Exit 4, a barricade, and seawall of Utah Beach are pieces of rusted metal buried in the sand.
The primary mission of the 101st Airborne was to support the landing of the U.S. 4th Infantry Division at Utah Beach. At 6:30 a.m., the American 4th Infantry Division landed on Utah Beach.
So again, this is Utah Beach. Utah Beach, they did not have this fierce resistance that they did on Omaha. There was casualties on Utah Beach, but Utah Beach, it was, I think, 197 soldiers died on Utah Beach, where Omaha, it was thousands. So Utah Beach was not as fortified. That's why the landing is not as chaotic as Omaha.
The 4th Infantry Division linked up with the 101st Paratroopers early on D-Day and quickly moved inland. In Brothers in Arms, the squad ambushes the Germans streaming away from Utah Beach along Exit 4. Today, a monument exists at Exit 4 to commemorate the landing of the Allied forces, which included the Free French soldiers who participated in the liberation of their country.
Yeah, so there was a lot of Free French forces. Free French forces, they were comprised of two elements. There was the Free French who escaped to Britain, and the Free French who escaped to Britain, they would fight in like North Africa, for example, and then they also participated in the Normandy campaign. And then there was also the Free French that actually stayed in France itself. They made up the resistance.
The primary mission of the 101st Airborne was to support the landing of the U.S. 4th Infantry Division at Utah Beach.
Also, about the Free French, I remember that in Band of Brothers, there's a scene where the Americans are riding in a truck, and you can actually see some Free French forces, but the Free French forces actually execute a group of Germans who had surrendered. So that scene, when you see those soldiers that wear those uniforms, a lot of people, they were confused on who those soldiers were. Those soldiers were Free French soldiers. The story of Objective XYZ. Page 1 of the official after-action reports relating to the action of Objective XYZ. Page 2 of the official action report relating to the actions of Objective XYZ. Close-up of page 1 showing Colonel SLLE's Marshall hand-drawn map of the XYZ complex. No, Marshall's map is not as accurate as the game. The alignment of the houses held by the Germans who had manned the gun position was about like this. After the capture of the CP, CP means command post, about 15 men went on to clean out this a rather impressive array of houses and barracks. They went in squad column because the nature of the ground was such that they couldn't deploy. A further difficulty, they were a mixed group who had never worked together before, and scarcely a man knew any of the others by name. Sergeant Harris on Summers of B did not know one of the other men on his detail. He walked right up to the first houses and kicked the door in. The Germans inside were firing through the slots, and he burst on them before they could turn. He shot 4 of them with a Tommy gun. Others, including some French civilians, had run from the rear and escaped to building number 3. The number 2 house was taken without difficulty. Then a MG manned by Private W.M.A. Burt was set up on the road at 50 yards distance to fire on the number 3 house. The Germans replied with rifles and Summers went through the next 5 houses in the same manner. One man aiding him, Private John Kamen, armed only with a carbine, M1 carbine. They switched the weapons from house to house, one covering with the carbine while others rushed the door with the Tommy gun. The houses were thick, stone-walled, and the walls were slotted with fire ports. The Germans kept firing on the road. The machine gunner kept blastering the ambushers. Summers and Kamen went on from building to building, taking no prisoners because no chance afforded fighting and firing and saying nothing to one another. 30 of the enemy were killed in the dwellings before the two men rushed a building near the end of the line, kicked the door open, and found it was a troop mess hall. A mess hall, that's where they were eating. There were 15 men at the table paying no heed to the fighting. Summers cut them down as they started to arise. And so about this, this document doesn't really make it clear whether some of the Germans were surrendering or not. It only says that they did not take prisoners. But here's the thing is, these guys were paratroopers. And paratroopers would oftentimes not take prisoners. That was actually true. American paratroopers also oftentimes wouldn't take prisoners. They would take prisoners at times, but oftentimes also they wouldn't. The reason for that is because paratroopers were dropped way behind enemy lines. And the paratroopers that were trapped way behind enemy lines, they had nowhere to send the prisoners, and so they would be guarding prisoners. They would basically be guarding prisoners the entire time. And so it was just too dangerous for them being behind enemy lines. I'm not saying it's okay to execute prisoners. I'm not defending that. But I'm saying is that that's why oftentimes paratroopers did not take prisoners, because of that. They were so deep behind enemy lines, and they really didn't have anywhere else, to send them at that point. And they considered it a threat to them. So that's basically what happened. Band of Brothers, if you watch Band of Brothers actually shows this exact, we're talking about, that they really didn't take prisoners. About the Thompsons, though, they switch weapons from house to house, one covering the car with the carbine while the others rush the doors with Tommy gun. Okay, so this is good. You had a guy that would actually cover the sides of the house, so if somebody came out, he dropped him with the carbine. The guys with Tommy guns, the Thompsons, went in to clear the house. Submachine guns would be better close quarters, house to house. The heroes of XYZ, Sergeant Summers, earned the Distinguished Service Cross for his role in this fight. And also about this, what I'll say is that if American paratroopers were caught by Germans, the Germans oftentimes would not take them prisoner. The Germans oftentimes would say that paratroopers were commandos. That's what they would call them. And Hitler issued the commando order in 1942. In 1942, there was the Saint Nazaire attack in France, where British commandos had landed at the port of Saint Nazaire, and they sabotaged the entire dock. What they did so much damage to the U-boat dock that the Germans were never able to use the dock again. And after that, Hitler got so angry that he said anybody that's captured that's a commando is to be executed on the spot. They are not to be treated as prisoners of war. And so the Germans would oftentimes say that American airborne were commandos and would execute them. A bazooka had been sent along by Cassidy, Sergeant Roy, Nick Rent in charge of it. The bazooka. The men waiting there saw the last bazooka round set the upper parts of the house in flames. Lieutenant Combs and Lieutenant Theodore S. Richards arrived in time to see it also. The Germans began pouring out of the house, and the men at the hedge poured fire into them as they fled backwards. It was much too late for them. Details about the bazooka fire that sets the house ablaze. Bring XYZ. And so here's the thing: is rocket launchers were not just used to destroy tanks. That's the thing that when people see rocket launchers in games and movies, they're oftentimes used to destroy tanks. But rocket launchers also had purpose on clearing out infantry, especially from buildings. If there is infantry that's actually shooting at you from a building and you fire a rocket launcher in that building, you're gonna do some serious damage and are probably gonna clear out the infantry from that building. House 1 of the XYZ complex, photographed by the Gerboxe survey team in location Normandy. And that looks identical to the house that you actually fought to secure in the game, too. Yeah, look at it. House 1 of the XYZ complex as represented in the game. I love this. I love this historical attention to detail. Photographed by Gerboxe is the dining room house that faces the courtyard where the final XYZ battle took place. The dining room house represented it in the game. Okay. Yeah, so all of this stuff, we've seen this here. Okay, let's see. Research at the U.S. National Archives. Located in Washington, D.C., the U.S. National Archives provided Gerboxe with thousands of pieces of historical evidence used in the making of the game. Co-director Brian Martel at the archives, he discovered thousands of photos, U.S. Army reports, eyewitness accounts, maps, and spy plane images. If only when they were making Call of Duty Vanguard, they would have hired a lot of these guys. Official U.S. Army after-action reports provides the volumes of detailed information about each unit's participation in the D-Day invasion. Cole figured he didn't want to engage until he would be sure where he was, so he beat on the door of a house at the edge of town. An answer came back from a woman, but she wouldn't open up. Though Cole continued to pound the door for about 10 minutes, a boy from the 505th, who spoke fairly good French, came up and gave her an argument through the door. She opened it. She was reluctant to give them any information, but finally told them they were at Saint Mir Église. And here's the thing is, the reason the French civilians at the time, they knew that there was an American invasion happening, but they had no idea exactly when it was going to happen. So when a lot of these paratroopers landed, the French civilians were probably very surprised by this. But here's the thing is, the reason that the French civilians did not want to help the Americans in a lot of these situations is because of fear. It was, they weren't necessarily scared of the Americans, but they were scared of the Germans. They were scared that if they gave the Americans some kind of information, the Germans would then come back and burn their town and kill them. There was actually a lot of massacres that actually happened in France, where the Germans actually, a lot of these happened more in southern France, but there was actually towns in southern France where the Germans, notably the SS, went into the town and just killed everybody. And so that's why a lot of the French civilians were just scared to give any kind of information to the Americans, because they were scared that the Germans would come back to that town and kill all of them. Aerial reconnaissance images taken by the Army Air Corps in 1944 helped soldiers prepare 60 years ago. Today, the photos are preserved at Nara. The farmhouse, the causeway, Purple Heart Lane. That's also, I know some people are going to recognize this from Hell Let Loose, Purple Heart Lane in Carrington also, but these were real locations in battles. Pages and pages of personal journals of paratroopers such as this one were discovered by the Gerboxe research team at the archives. Maps hand-drawn by soldiers in 1944 offer minute details about small unit actions. The map tells of Private Sterno's role in Cole's charge. The U.S. Army Signal Corps took combat photographs through the ETO. Gerboxe accumulated about 500 such photos of paratroopers in Normandy. Before D-Day, Army cartographers described every road, house, and hedgerow in France. The maps helped Gerboxe rebuild Normandy 60 years later. The Thompson submachine gun. Oh, this is gonna be cool.
This is the U.S. M1 Thompson submachine gun.
And the M1 Thompson, it's different from the original variant of the Tommy gun or the Thompson submachine gun, because the original variant, the bolt was actually on the top. Where the receiver is. The bolt is actually on the M1A1 Thompson. The bolt is actually on the right side. The
Thompson submachine gun was the weapon of choice of the paratroopers of D-Day.
Yeah,
the Thompson weighs 12.5 pounds when fully loaded and is 33 inches long. The Thompson fires between 600 and 700 rounds per minute.
Then the Thompson was a great submachine gun, but here's the thing. The reason that the U.S. started making the grease gun was for money purposes. The reason Thompson was such an expensive gun to make. It was a very expensive submachine gun. I think the Thompson was the most expensive submachine gun of the war to make, correct me if I'm wrong. That's why the grease gun was made. The grease gun was made at a fraction of the price.
Paratroopers would load their Thompson with either a 20-round or 30-round magazine.
True.
In Brothers in Arms, the .45 caliber Thompson is absolutely deadly in the hands of a trained paratrooper in close combat. Use this weapon for the close assault. This is the U.S. M1 Thompson.
Okay, that's everything there. Let's continue here.
Familiar faces. Makes a place like this almost feel like home. Almost. Sometimes I forget Alan and Garnett are two people. They showed up at Fort Bragg together and no one has seen them apart since. We just started saying Alan and Garnett like it was one word. Even with the damn mist drops, they still managed to stay together.
What do you suppose killed him?
Wasn't old age, I know that.
They wouldn't just leave him here? Didn't we take this town?
I think we have to assume for the time being that Foucaultville isn't under our control.
Red, you're ruining my good mood.
So what's the plan, Baker?
Okay.
You need something, Baker? Get me when we're ready.
Okay.
Face of fire! Fire! I can't shoot!
Move to that position!
Let's move!
Wilco!
Hit them now! That's it! Get him!
Here we go!
Lay it on! Pour on the fire!
Put some fire on him! Yeah, he's now!
Okay. Got you. Okay. I love the iron sights in this game so much. Got you, okay.
Keep up the fire! Heavy fire! Right there!
Pour on the fire!
Die schlachten uns ab! Head that way!
Double time!
Got it!
Die Augen fallen uns in die Flanke!
Take them out!
I can't hit him! Here we go! Fire! I can't hit him!
Move now!
Down!
Roger! Cover me!
Die schlachten uns ab! Another down!
Find a way around the machine gun, okay.
Red! Fall in! Tighten it up!
You heard him, let's move!
Wilco!
Crap, okay, yeah. We're not going down that road. No, no, no.
You're with me!
Let's go!
We're gonna deal with this. Okay.
Got it!
Verstanden! Baker, get back! Watch it!
Crap.
Set up there! Red! Get up here! Double time!
Move out!
Oh, that was
Roger!
bad. Okay.
Red! Take cover there!
Get moving!
Wilco! Fire on that position!
Pour it on there! Keep up the fire!
Suppressing fire! Let's give them all we got!
Pour on the fire!
Go over there!
Covering fire! Let's move! Pressure's on him!
Face of fire! Over there!
Baker, get down! I can't shoot there, Sarge! Pouring it on!
I need you over there! That way! Double time!
Roger!
Go! Go! Go!
Double time! Wilco! Another down! Wir werden alles schaffen! There's more!
Move!
Okay, we're
It
doing
must move!
we're doing good so far.
Got it! Wir werden alle sterben!
Mist, mich hat's erwischt!
Stand up! Another down! Die schlachten uns ab!
How are we gonna deal with this situation here?
Get that gunner fast!
Watch it!
Oh, great.
I can't shoot the bastard from here! Pressure's on him! Die schlachten uns ab! Keep it up!
Oh, okay.
Keep your eyes peeled for more!
Get over here!
Roger that! Schon dabei! Schon dabei!
Secure the town of Pokerville. Okay. A key 502nd PRI objective is hold the town of Pokerville, the extreme northern flank of the entire Allied foothold in France. Okay. 91st Infantry Division. Okay.
Move fast!
More crowds!
Don't stop firing!
Sarge, get down! Covering fire! These bubble taggers get out of there, you Nazi prick! There's no way, Sarge! Covering fire! Covering fire! Sarge! Get down! Oh, shit!
Okay, while they're suppressing them, I'm gonna flank.
Suppress those crowds!
Clear?
Stay with me!
Got it! Die Amerikaner! Ich bin getroffen! More crowds over there! He's down!
Suppress those bastards!
I can't
Here we
shoot
go!
them! Yeah, that's right, you better hide! Covering fire! Get on his flank! Das ist lynched! Das ist... Die schlachten uns ab!
You're with me!
Roger!
Fire!
Crowds! Pouring it on! I can't hit him! Bin getroffen! Baker! Get out of the way! There's no way! I don't see any more!
Man the MG-42 to defend the church, okay.
I'm only shooting at kneecaps today!
Follow me!
Roger that! Jawohl, sofort!
MG-42, one of the fastest firing machine gun of World War II.
Fire now!
Covering fire!
Oh, kill the German mortar teams. Okay.
Let's stick together! You're with me!
Got it!
Take cover there! Take them out!
From me, Lord! Who wants the first bullet?
Is that it? We got them all? Oh crap, there's
Get to
more.
that cover!
Roger that!
Suppress those bastards!
Here we go! Keep your eyes peeled for more! Remember to check the bodies for smokes!
We got here as soon as we could. Heard our guys were wiped out in a German counterattack. Baker, I pegged you wrong. First I thought you were a shy, poetic young man. Turns out you're a shy, poetic young man who kills everyone who gets in his way. That's a downright admirable quality.
It's amazing what you talk about after the lead stops flying around you. Hartsock told us of one bar fight too many. His reward was a nasty scar on his cheek, courtesy of a loudmouth lumberjack and a broken beer bottle. Allen and Garnett said they both enlisted right after high school rather than wait to be drafted. When it was my turn to talk, I just froze. I realized that nothing in my life before had really meant anything. Until now.
We have to link up with the other squads in Veerville. Any minute now, gliders are gonna start landing in that field. If a glider hits even one of those poles, it's curtains for the boys inside. Clear out as many of those damn things as you can.
That is a German truck they
he has
stole.
a nasty habit of making this shit sound easy.
Okay, Baker. Lead the way.
Red! Stay with me!
Let's move! Roger that!
German reinforcements will continue to arrive until your objective is completed. Okay.
Move now!
Double time! Got it!
hard to see him from here.
They're coming back!
Okay, got one.
We gotta get around him. They're coming back.
Get up here, double time! Go, go, go! Put some fire on them!
Suppressive fire.
That way!
Here we
Double
go!
time!
Get moving.
Roger!
Killed it.
Wir werden alle sterben! Fall in!
Let's move.
Let's go!
Keep shooting!
Die Amis fallen uns in die Flanke!
Roger!
I dropped that one
Keep
too.
up the fire!
There we go.
He's down! Pouring it on!
Shift fire!
Here we go!
Field poles can be destroyed with explosive charge. Okay.
Shoot the fire from here! Another down! Wir werden alle sterben!
Okay, I got them both. Okay. So, infinite reinforcements are going to keep coming unless I take care of these poles. Okay. Oh crap, more of them now. Okay, almost done here. Two more. And clear the way for the landing glider. Okay. Whoa. Okay.
Let's stick together!
Double time.
Destroy western field poles. Yep. Gliders. I don't know too much about aircraft, but these were used in the Normandy invasion. And they did oftentimes hit down hard like this.
Move fast! Get over there! Unload on him! Target that area! Move to that position!
Damn, I didn't mean to do that.
Who wants the first bullet? We'll go! Baker! Get out of the way!
Base of fire! Over there! Hurry up! Get over there!
Fire!
That hurts!
Baker! Get back! Watch it!
Suppress those bastards!
Firing! Covering fire! Covering fire! Yeah, that's right. You better hide. Flank you!
Suppressing fire!
Pick it up! Here we go!
Really open here? Okay. Come on, come on.
That cover will protect you for long!
Move it!
Roger! In die Flanke! Die Audis fallen uns in die Flanke!
Rally on me!
Von der anderen Seite! Die kommen von der anderen Seite! Baker! Wilco! Get down! Achtet auf die Flanke! Achtet auf die Flanke!
Head that way!
Verstanden!
That's it! Get him!
Fire in the hole! Covering fire! They're screwed! Die Schlachten
Get over here! Cover me!
Roger! Verdammt! Covering fire! He's down! Wir werden alle sterben! Die Schlachten
Okay, time to get rid of these holes here.
Stay low and go! Go!
Damn.
Die Audis fallen uns in die Flanke!
Base of fire!
Firing! Achtet auf die Flanke! Verstanden!
I didn't think I threw that far enough.
Keep your eyes peeled for more! Remember to check the bodies for smoke!
I think it's the last one. Completed. Destroy western field poles. Okay, there we go. Clear the way for the landing glider. Oh.
They're coming back! Run! Get down!
Bring it in!
Got it!
Investigate the glider to end your mission. Okay.
We killed them! I don't see any more!
Man, I thought I was a goner. Thanks for taking those things down. I figured I'd get skewered for sure. Hey, you with the 502nd, right? I'm supposed to resupply you guys. I got plenty of ammo inside. Take whatever you need.
Okay, so I guess we will wrap it up here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. But yeah, on those gliders, it must have just been terrifying coming down on that to AA and stuff. And those make a hard landing. So it's not just like they're jumping out of it and paratrooping down. They actually make a hard landing on the ground. Again, I don't know that much about the aircraft, but I do know the gliders were used very heavily in Normandy. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, drop a like, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.